All right, hey everybody. This is definitely the Green Swamp server video that you've been looking for. Check it out. My name is Doug. This is Astro AF. All right, before I jump in, there's a couple things that I wanted to mention. And one is that I'm moving from EQ Mod to Green Swamp server, I hope. Everything's going really good so far. I have more testing to do, and I'm only held up by... So anyway, once I get an opportunity, which looks like tomorrow night might be decent, then I'm going to finish up and do a part 2 on this video. Green Swamp server, if you haven't heard of it before, it is mount control software. It does the same things like what EQ Mod would do for you. However, it's updated. It's in this century, and there's a lot of good things about it. And specifically, they have a great support group over on groups.io, and it's amazing. You get a problem, you can try and get questions. Someone's going to help you over there. They have just been fantastic, and it's been awesome. In fact, I went through some troubleshooting together with one of the developers and was explaining my problem. It had to do with a COM port. They made me a custom release to fix my issue, and then ended up putting that into the latest patch. So they actually gave me a patch release that I could use to get going right away. And then they did their work on it, incorporated it into their main repository, and got that in the latest release. I installed it, fired up, everything just like immediately started working. It was fantastic. So in this video, I want to go through getting Green Swamp server, maybe talking a little bit more about what Green Swamp server is and does. And I want to go through some configuration of Green Swamp server. And I'll tell you what, I have searched the internet and watched videos, and the stuff that I was interested in trying to figure out, I just couldn't find it. I've watched all the good videos, and they are good videos, but I got some stuff I want to share with you that I didn't find anywhere else, so we'll get into it here. All right, let's check it out. So let's navigate over to the greenswamp.org website. I'll have the link down in the description. And a little bit about Green Swamp software. It is a mount control software, and it is an ASCOM compliant driver for your telescope. And it supports Skywatcher mounts, all kind of Orion mounts, EQ8, the HQ5. They have the entire list here, Orion mounts. And so anyway, there's a ton of different mounts that's supported here, and others, it says. I don't know the comprehensive list, so you could check it out for yourself to see if it is compatible with your mount. In order to download Green Swamp server, you can click on the GS server button here. There's also a tab up here at the top, GS server. Either one of those will get you there. And then you can click on the downloads. That will take you to this page. And I have downloaded the version 1.0.8.6 release, which was just released on January 1st. And it had fixes in it that were important to me, and it is working really well so far. They also have beta releases available here on their GitHub. Again, it is open source. So yeah, click on the installer and you'll download that for your system and install it. I won't go through installing the software. And so now we'll head over to my Windows PC on my telescope, and we'll have a look at the Green Swamp server interface. All right, over here on the Windows PC, this is the mini PC that's out on my telescope. I have GS server here on my desktop. A couple things about this. It is available here as a desktop application, so I'll go ahead and fire this up first, but we'll come back and I'll look at it with you in a different way in just a moment. Now, my mount is in a horizontal position right now and parked and covered up because the weather is horrible. And so we'll go ahead and we'll click the connect button here. But so I'm going to choose the mount type here when I first do this. And so that's Skywatcher for me. And I'm going to connect. Now, before that, what I would have done is come in here to the settings, and I would have chosen the COM port that my mount is running on. So for me, I'm running the EQ Mod cable right now into COM3 on my Windows PC. And since it's a USB to serial connection, I'm using a baud rate of 9600. Since we're here, we'll just keep going. So the mount type is Skywatcher. And that's all that's available to me because that's what I have installed. These are defaults. So it's a German polar alignment for that alignment mode. And so the equatorial system is local topocentric. So here, the RA guiding rate. This is actually, I did some Googling around to try and find out what the best rate for the Skywatcher HQ5 is. And I came up with 90 for both the RA and the deck. These are some configurations that you may need to play with. I'm starting out at 90 because these are the recommended ones. Whether or not they are the best ones for my specific mount, I'll need to find out. But I'm going to start with what's recommended. And for the HQ5 Pro, it's 90 for both of these. Flip angle. This is really important. And we might come back to this here. This has to do with setting your limits. And I want to spend some time on limits because that's one of the things that I couldn't find good information for in all of my searching. I did a ton of trial and error, and I talked to the developers over in groups.io a lot. I got this sorted out now, and I wanted to go through limits with you. I'm also going to show you the way that I approach my setup here. For now, that can stay 10, but for testing, we're going to mess with that. And I'll show you why I have it at 10 also, because you'll want to make a decision as to what that actually is going to be for your specific needs. Max slew rate, just 3.5. That was the default sidereal. You could certainly change this to any of these others, depending on what you are currently imaging. You can change this rate from a different place. So this is just your basic default setting here. You can also set the LED brightness level for your polar alignment scope. The rest of this I just pretty much left at defaults. This is the sidereal rates and so forth. So yeah, I didn't make any changes there. Once that's set up, and then also my GPS is set up so that I can get coordinates for park positions here. You can define your own park positions. I'm currently using two. I have the default park position, which is at the North Celestial Pole, and I have a horizontal park position, which is where I park for when I am shut down and covered up. So you can click the plus button here to create, or you can delete. And then once you have them, you can switch which one you want to set to, and it'll set the current position that you're in to that particular position. So going back over here, we'll go ahead and connect. You can see that this just moved, and this is the current horizontal position that my telescope is in. Now, obviously, I can't slew or anything right now because I'm under cover, but I wanted to show you. It's currently in the horizontal position here, as you can see, and it also tells me here that I'm parked. It says unparked, so if I click that, it would unpark it, and it's saying that I'm in horizontal. Now, home is a default, and home I have as the North Celestial Pole position, and you have the option to actually set your home position to whatever you want. And you can do that through the resync button here. And when we get better weather, I'll actually go through these and show you these. Right now, I need to leave it alone. You have your hand controller here. This is a GSS hand control. And obviously, you can manually slew here. You can set your speed, and you can set up your direction mode for your axes, whether or not you're on axes or guiding. And you can flip, and you can also set up anti-backlash for your east-west or north-south directions. And then you can slew directly to coordinates if you want to enter coordinates here, and then go to. And at the top, then you've got your RA and deck current pointing position. So these are basically your pointing, and your local hour angle here. This is one we'll refer to later when we're working on limits, and that tells you how long until your meridian, which is really handy. So if we go through to the next tab in options, this just allows you to set up what you want to see in the user interface. And for me, I'm just using the 3D model pole locator, which I don't know if I'm going to really use that or not. We'll see. I haven't messed with it because I use the 3-star line over in Nina, so probably not something I need. Pulses, that way I can see a graph of pulses with the mount. It does have a connection to the autofocuser, probably something I'm not going to use. I'm not sure what the use case is for that, but it's actually kind of cool that it's in here. And I can choose my focuser and use it. And it also has an alignment here, which I will want to play with. Again, I use the alignment over in Nina. And then no sleep mode. You don't want this to fall asleep while you're in the middle of a session and you're asleep. Keep this on no sleep mode. And then I also have warnings on. These warnings are cool, and I actually have voice turned on here, and it speaks to me when it's parking and slewing and things like that. And I've actually found that to be quite handy. If I'm not looking at it, I hear the voice pop up going that we're having a Meridian flip or something like that, and it's actually quite nice. You can change your theme colors, so that's just how you like to view it. And then the other things are you can reset here any of the options and get back to defaults. You can set your language and your performance, so just the rendering capabilities within the app. The 3D model setup, you can actually choose each one of these. Let me go back to options. Each one of these options, or one of these tabs up here, they have their own context menu here, so you can set up for your options to monitor these particular things if you would like to, and that will log for those. So if you're having trouble with something, you can actually select these and generate logs. We go over to 3D, and then the settings for that. You can choose a type of telescope that you have. I have a Schmidt Cassegrain, so that's what I have here. But you could choose any other one. Those will give you a representation over here in the 3D model. And at first I thought this was just sort of neat. It was, I don't want to say gimmicky or whatever, but to be honest with you, this has been so useful to just take a look at and have a visual real quick of where's my telescope pointing. And once this is in sync, it's really great to have when you don't need to run outside just because you want to know where you're pointing and make sure, or that you are in your park position or whatever. Yeah, it's been super handy. So I really, really like this. It's fun too. Yeah, you can set up your pole and configure that. So if you are doing a manual polar alignment, then you have this available to you. You'll have a pulses graph here that I mentioned before. These also can set your settings for the pulses and graph and the colors of the graph. We go back here, and we didn't have any settings. And then the focuser that I mentioned. So I can actually come in and choose my focuser. So there's my Oasis focuser. It knows it's there. And there's a simulator here. I'm not going to go through this because I'm not using it, and I'm not exactly sure how I would use it, but I might mess around with it and see, probably go over to the manual and see what the actual use case of the focuser is in here. Yeah, you can actually change your focus settings, so you can choose your step size, and then I think you can actually tells you what your position is. And I don't know if I can connect to that or not. Let's see. It's not on right now, but yeah, I have in and out buttons, so that'll allow me to actually change my focus position here from GSS. Kind of cool, but again, I'm not sure what the use case on that is. You can perform your alignment here in GSS. I might mess around with this and see how it does, but again, it's hard to beat 3-point polar align in Nina. So yeah, back to the main tab, and this is where you'll be most of the time. So you have your unpark or park. That'll say park if you're not currently parked. Home, stop button. You'll want to be able to be at your mount physically during your setup. And when we go through that, I will talk you through the setup. What I did, I configured my park positions first, and then I configured my limits second before I did anything else. And then I went over and I tested the limits. In the next video, I want to go through setting up your park positions and setting your limits and testing your limits. Those are the things that I didn't see anybody else doing in any other videos or stuff that I could find in searching. It's like one of the most important things. We want to prevent a crash, and there's a lot of things that are really important to consider, and they are located in multiple places. So down here at the bottom, so this is kind of hidden in the UI, and it's really important. So obviously we've got some status monitoring here. I'm parked. It'll tell me if I'm home. It'll tell me if I'm tracking. This will be highlighted. It also tells me that right now I'm Pier East. If I'm on the other side of the pier, it'll tell me that I'm Pier West. So this is all information here. Now this exclamation point, this is where the limits are set. And you have to explicitly tell GSS what to do if you hit a limit. So you can configure your degrees past Meridian that you want something to do. But if this is set to nothing, it's going to do nothing. Or if you turn off tracking, then it'll just stop tracking and it won't continue. But if Nina tells it to slew and you don't have Nina configured correctly, you are at risk of a crash. what I do, this is a fallback. If Nina doesn't do what Nina's supposed to do, or I've lost connection, something happens, whatever, I am going to force this to park at the point where it is past what was expected from Nina. And where am I going to park to? I'm going to park to default in this case. This is really important. You can also set your horizon here. So if in the morning you're getting really low, you don't want to go any further. For me, 20 degrees, I'm not shooting anything below 20 degrees. And I just want it to turn off tracking. I'll catch up with it in the morning when I get up, and just so that it hasn't driven itself down into the ground. And that's all I want. So that's really important. And we'll go through that during setup. And then we have warnings here, and you'll have error notifications here. And then these indications tell you that you can get your mount information here. Here's my current connected mount, just a bit of information about the mount. And we have sidereal here is set, and I have voice turned on. This is just telling me that voice is turned on. And again, this was my configuration for which telescope when I connected. So that's pretty much the user interface. And when it's slewing, the 3D representation of the scope and peer will actually be moving along with it. It's pretty slick. Oh, another thing, all of these windows can pop out. You can reset this view. You can open this up into its own window here. And so you can float these, or you can just keep them docked. So if you wanted to just have one of these windows out while you're looking at something else, that's fine. You can do that with your mount controls here. And you can also do it with your hand controller, which might be nice if you want to keep that off to the side somewhere in a float, or you can just dock it. So whatever you like. But so those are all available to either be docked or floating windows. We're going to head over to Nina, and I'll show you that configuration over there, which is basically the same as this configuration, because when you open up the configuration for the ASCOM driver in this is, you're going to see this user interface. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect, and we'll close this down, and we'll open Nina. I'll just connect everything here just because it's easy. It just told me that I am peer east right now, which we saw that before. If I go to the mount control here, and if we disconnect from that, then we can go into settings, and then here we have our UI. So it's the same thing that we were just looking at, but now we're actually being controlled through Nina. Connected applications is one, because Nina is connecting to it. Now, once I connect like PhD 2, it also is going to be working with GSS, obviously. Then this will tell us that we have 2 connected applications up here. And we will also see that when we're controlling this, that it'll show us that instead of horizontal here, it's going to say external, and it's being controlled externally. So we are parked. So I'm going to unpark.
Tracking off. Tracking off.
And then I can set this at park. And now in Nina, every time that you open up Nina and do this, you do need to click this set as park for the current position. I am not going to do that. And I'm not going to click on park right now either, because I want to do that from GSS. So I don't want my mount to move. I'm going to go back and go ahead and disconnect. And I'm going to go over to GSS here. And I'm just going to park.
Slowing to park. Parked.
Okay, so we are parked again. And I just did that here because I wanted to be super safe, because, again, I'm undercover and everything. So I didn't want to slew while the cover's on. We're connected by one application. And if I would have clicked the button there back in Nina for, here, let me connect again. For set as park, then that would have shown as being controlled externally by Nina. All right. So what's important here? Well, we need to go to our options imaging, and Meridian flip settings. I've got these set up for testing right now, because so I have like 1 and 2 minutes. Normally I would have this set at like 5 minutes and 10 minutes, but I was testing, and I'm still testing. I'm waiting for the weather to get better. My Meridian flip. So I was slewing to a target near the meridian, and then using the hand control to get real close to the meridian within a minute, and then watching to make sure that the limits were working. And so I had set GSS to a lower value than I had set here in Nina, so that I could see that GSS would actually stop the tracking and park the scope automatically. And what that represents is if something here, if I had this 5 minutes and the max duration at 10 minutes, and I had that degree set over in GreenSwamp server, then GreenSwamp server would say, hey, we've hit the Meridian limit and we're going to go ahead and park the scope, versus continuing going in and having a crash into the tripod or whatever. That is the last ditch failsafe, and I want to make sure I show you how to set that up. And I wish I could do that here, but with the weather that we have tonight is just an overview of everything, and we'll actually get into going through the motions and setup of everything as we go. Now, the other thing, in addition to Nina, then, is PhD 2. And in here, we've got to set up I got to connect guiding. Yeah, one moment. All right, so let's connect PhD 2. All right, so when we come in here, so now you can see I have configured a new profile for GSS HQ5 with ZWO 120mm, which is what I'm running. I can go, if I disconnect from these, I still have my EQ mod profile here. I can switch back to EQ mod anytime that I want. I will probably have to make sure that I'm parked into the position that I want to be in and then resync EQ mod, because it's probably messed up now. And also any PEC recording that I had from EQ mod is also no good anymore, because I've changed the stepper motors, don't know where they are anymore in EQ mod. So take that into consideration for setting this up. If you want to be able to switch back and forth, it's not like particularly easy. You can do it and it's not that hard, but if you're using PEC, you're going to have to probably record your PEC if you do switch back and forth. So anyway, just went through this and set it up. The only difference was connecting to the ASCOM GS Sky Telescope mount, and I just went through the wizard and set that up. I have things that I need to do here over in the tools menu. I need to go through. I did get a good calibration in between some clouds last night, but I want to go through it again. I did not make it into the guiding assistant, and I also want to do a calibrate Meridian flip from here and make sure that that is calibrated correctly. So I'll use that tool. I'll be just making adjustments and getting all of my mount settings configured. Also, the algorithms. I've got the predictive PEC set up. Now, for my HEQ5, I deselect the auto adjust period here, and I select my actual period length for the HEQ5, which is 638 seconds for the period. And then I went through and took a look at some of the settings that were available in here. So like in the expert mode, these defaults here. So this was a default of 100. This was a default of 2. And the prediction, I wanted to bump that up. And so I've raised that to 9. And the minimum worm cycles period estimation, I did the same thing with. So I've bumped those up. We'll see how that works. I have yet to test it. I think I left the rest of these as their defaults. And then I didn't change anything here for the declination. And I am going to look at backlash compensation, but for now I've left it disabled. So anyway, I have work left to do in here. So that's what I'm going to be working on in the next video. So that's pretty much it. Other than going and actually showing you the working configuration and going through the calibrations and getting a session going and guiding. So I still have yet to do that, and I want to walk through that with you. But most importantly, I want to hit off right away in the next video on setting your park positions and then ensuring that your limits are set correctly for safety to make sure that you're not going to crash your mount. All right, so there's an overview of GreenSwamp Server, how to get it, taking a look at the user interface, going through all the different tabs and the options, looking at connections in Nina and setup, and also looking at the configuration in PhD 2. So that was all overview. Just wanted to introduce you to GreenSwamp Server here in this video. So in the next video, and if you're not subscribed, you should do that right now. So hit the bell and get a notification when that next video comes out, which should be this coming weekend. And I am going to go through the actual setup and configuration of this. We'll be at the scope, or I'll have a video of the scope so that we can watch watch it while we're making changes and checking configuration. And again, we will start out with setting your park positions, and then we'll work on setting limits, making sure that you're protected and avoiding crashes, and have a backup so that if Nina doesn't do what it's supposed to do, or whatever control software you're using, then GSS will kick in and prevent your mount from crashing into your tripod or pier. Yeah, we'll get into that. And then hopefully we have good weather and I can continue to move on, and we can get into guiding and calibration and get a session going. So that's my goal. So I don't know, that might be a third video. We'll see how things go depending on weather. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. My name is Doug. This is Astro AF, and look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks a lot.